Hello, NPR. This is your host, Erik, and for all the listeners out there, I have a special treat. We were able to go back in time and get Isabel, an escaped slave from the 1700s, here for an interview. The future is amazing. I can't believe how much things have changed since now and then. So, Isabel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from? I was a slave in Rhode Island in the 1700s. In 1776, when I was a teenager, Mrs. Mary Finch, my old master, died. My sister Ruth and I were supposed to be freed in her will, but Mr. Robert Finch, her nephew, claimed that my sister and I belonged to him. Later, Mr. Robert Finch sold us to Mr. and Mrs. Lockton, a wealthy family in New York. Can you describe what it was like in New York in 1776? At the time, the American colonies were fighting the Revolutionary War against the British. The Locktons, family I was with, were loyalists, or people who support the British. Did you have any involvement in the war? Yes, I spied for the Patriots, hoping they would free me. Mr. Lockton had me be his servant girl when he was meeting with his friends. They would discuss their conspiracies on how to overthrow the revolutionaries. I would pretend not to hear anything, and then at night I would report the information to the Patriots. Did the Patriots free you? No, I had to escape myself. What was life like with the Locktons? Mrs. Lockton was a harsh master. She beat me if I didn't perform up to her expectations or was disobedient. Mr. Lockton was nicer. He never hit me or yelled at me. I had many chores to do. I had to bring in firewood, make breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I also had to clean. Can you give us some examples of how hard it was to be an obedient slave? One time, I stood up to Mrs. Lockton for taking away my sister. I didn't even back down when she threatened me. Then she hit me with a painting. After that, Becky opened the door and I ran. Becky was the housekeeper. I tried to go to the rebels and get freed by them, but they wouldn't free me. Unfortunately, Mrs. Lockton caught up to me. Eventually, she had me branded, which means she took a hot iron and burned the letter I onto my cheek. What do you think was the worst part? It was either when the rebels refused to free me or the branding. How did this affect you? Well, when the rebels refused to free me, I felt very betrayed. I decided to help the British, but they wouldn't free me either. The brand made me feel shameful. I felt as though everyone just looked at the mark instead of me. Can you tell us about some of your other experiences? At one point, I started freeing the rebel prisoners at the Bridewell prison. When the prisoners arrived, I saw Curzon, a fellow slave who was my friend, being herded into the prison. I found out that the prisoners didn't receive much to eat. I decided that it was my duty to make sure Curzon stayed alive because I knew he would have done the same for me. To improve conditions at the prison, I also delivered messages for some rebel captains who organized for doctors to come. Did Mrs. Lockton ever punish you for feeding the prisoners? Yes. At first, when Miss Lady Seymour, an old relative of the Locktons, told Mrs. Lockton, she threatened me and told me to not do it again because it would ruin the Lockton name. Later, when I did do it again, one of her friends had seen me talking to one of the rebel captains. She tried to force me to give her the note that he had given me. I refused and threw it in the fire. Then she beat me. How did you cope with the beatings? I calmed myself down and forced myself not to attack her. Did you eventually become free? Yes, I escaped. How did you escape? It was the night of the Queen's ball. I was very scared because I knew horrible things would happen if I was caught. I was quite lucky that the Queen's ball was that night, though, because no one was there to stop me. After that, I went to the prison. I offered to help to clean the prison, and the guard let me in. I pretended Curzon was dead. Then I helped him escape. Finally, I rowed us across the river, and that's where I must have fainted.
What lessons have you learned from your experiences?
I learned to be true to myself.
Can you tell us what this means and give us a sense of why it's important?
Because I couldn't have had the idea to do those courageous acts. Without my identity, I would have been a mindless drone. I learned that no matter how much Miss Lockton beat me, she couldn't take away my soul. I made the brand a part of me, as a sign of strength, not something to shame me. In this way, I kept my identity and held true to my values.
Thank you, Isabel, for visiting us today and sharing your incredible story.
Thank you, too.